Hello and welcome to Beyond the To-Do List, the show where we talk to the people behind the productivity. I'm your host, Erik Fisher. There's a romanticized idea that is perpetuated by writers and even spread outside of the writer's circle to everyday workers. There's a quote that's often attributed to Ernest Hemingway. There is nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed. And even Stephen Pressfield perpetuates this, not in a bad way, but in a sense that if you want to get the work done, then you need to sit in the same place every time when it's time to do the work and sit and do the work. It's a very rigid, non-fluid approach to getting work done. I don't think that they're wrong per se. I do think, however, there needs to be more flexibility when it comes to where we do our work and what type of work we do in different locations because of the fact that we are using mobile devices and laptops and remote working, and that there's a whole legion of remote workers that now work from anywhere and everywhere. My guest this week is my friend Todd Bushong, who is also a remote worker, and I'm going to share with you a conversation that I sat down and had with him about an idea we came up with called the Productivity Pub Crawl. I think you're really going to like the ideas that we bring up and how you can start to incorporate those, not just into taking an extra day of uber productivity, which is what the experiment was, but how to then take those findings and things that we learned, and even when you try the experiment, incorporating what we learned and what you will learn into your everyday, day-to-day workflow. Before we get to that conversation, I want to say an extremely enthusiastic thank you to Xstand for sponsoring this episode of Beyond the To-Do List. I reached out to them because I was part of their Kickstarter and I wanted them to be a sponsor for this show, specifically this episode for sure. Xstand is this beautiful, lightweight, portable, solid bamboo stand that allows you to have a standing desk wherever you need one. It assembles in 2 seconds, and it adjusts to either a height of 9 inches or 12 inches. I take it everywhere I'm working. In fact, during this entire episode, as you listen as we talk through the Productivity Pub Crawl and working at multiple locations and how we did that and what we found worked best, picture me using it at each place because I literally was. In fact, I'm literally using it right now. I get so many people stopping me to ask what it is or compliment me on how awesome they think it is when I'm out working with my Xstand. That can be an interruption, but it's a kind of cool interruption because I don't mind. It makes me feel cool that I'm using this thing that looks cool and is propping up my laptop to a better height for me to stand at, and in fact even use at a sitting setup where it props the laptop up to proper eyesight height. You need to go check it out at getxstand.com. That's GETXSTAND.com. Getxstand.com. And you can purchase one for 15% off and free shipping in the United States with the discount code BTTDL15. That's Beyond the To-Do List 15. That's BTTDL15. for 15% off plus free shipping inside the U.S. Again, I'm literally using this thing right now, and I don't think there's a single day I don't use it. So I had to have them as a sponsor. I'm so glad they decided to do that, and you really should go check it out. Again, it's beautiful, it's lightweight, it's portable, and it saves my back because I'm using it all the time. All right, enjoy this conversation about the Productivity Pub Crawl. Well, this week my guest is a milestone in many ways for the show. Number one, this is one of the very few episodes where I'm talking to somebody face-to-face and recording it. Number two, this is the person that I've known the longest that's ever been on the show. Prior to that, it was Clark Van Viventer with the Portfolio Income, who is a mutual friend of ours.
Indeed.
And then number three, Todd Bushong. This is your first podcast guest opportunity. You're a longtime listener, first-time podcaster.
Yep, long-time listener, first-time podcaster. It's an honor to be on the show. It's a little surreal.
Yeah. So we're recording this in about February. We had this idea early December. The productivity pub crawl.
Yep.
That I just said we had to. It's kind of like a pub crawl, and I'm like, oh, it's a productivity pub crawl.
Yes, indeed.
So let's SEO that. And then we had it out of a couple of different ideas, context-wise. And I want to go through those and then go through how we decided to research and then implement it, the actual implementation of the idea. And then I think we did it twice, 2 Saturdays in a row, and then kind of the holidays came. But what we learned from the experience and how we've kind of taken some things out of that experiment. So let's set this up. What's some of the context? Like, how did we come about deciding that we wanted to do this experiment?
Well, after relocating here, being in the Chicagoland area for almost 10 years and kind of reconnecting with you, I discovered, hey, we're both remote workers. I work for a small marketing firm, an Amazon marketing firm. I'm a writer for that firm. I do everything from home. Occasionally we'll meet with the head offices, but we have clients all around the world, and I'm really just in contact with them. So I'm writing every day. And once we discovered that we were both remote workers, we found out, hey, why don't we work together from time to time? It might be nice to do that. I, miss having what we will probably call throughout the show the water cooler experience, having a colleague that you can just, chit-chat with from time to time, share mutual kind of anxieties, share mutual victories, just having kind of a coworker. So I think for quite a few months, we were spending Mondays at our favorite coffee shop, Abbey Coffee Company, a little plug there.
And they sell great coffee. I'm going to put their link in the show notes because you really should buy some online.
It is delicious.
Yes.
So, but we would spend Mondays at a local coffee shop, and Mondays were, I think, for the both of us, kind of a slower day and a day to kind of dive into our week and to map out what we had to do that week. It consisted of a lot of really busy
admin
type
stuff. Self-admin
exactly.
type
Self-admin work was a lot of what we were doing on these Mondays. But we were discovering that it seemed no matter how hard we worked throughout the week, that there were still things that just needed to get done. It always felt like there's these hanging tasks that don't quite get wrapped up. And this is a difficult thing, I think, for all remote workers. Any of you, your listeners out there who work remotely, understand that staying on top of your priorities and your tasks can be a little bit more difficult when you're a remote worker. There's all kinds of freedoms that come with remote working that are fantastic. Setting your own schedule, being flexible, being able to spend more time with friends and family. These are all great things. Obviously, one of the difficulties is being kind of your own boss, means being somebody that is your own monitor as well, monitoring all of your tasks. And so in talking to each other throughout those Monday coffee shop experiences, we kept saying, man, I just feel like I'm not staying on top the way that I should be. And, we brainstormed about a lot of things, but we came to this conclusion that it might be fun as well as productive to see if we could implement a way of having a fun work Saturday. Now, clearly this isn't going to be a thing where we wanted to work every Saturday,
preferably this is a thing that if you're behind or you want to get caught up or even get ahead, you would implement this strategy of adding in that extra day. Now, don't get me wrong. There are people out there who work 6 days a week or more. I don't subscribe to that being healthy at all, to be honest. I like to – I mean, I'm referring back to the Rob Bell episode which I feel like I'm linking to every time in the show notes more recently these days, that you've got to have your rhythm. You've got to have your daily rhythms where you're getting started, you're getting going, you've gotten stuff done, you wind down, a new day happens, but then every cycle of a week you hit pause, not even just for one day, but kind of you can't really hit pause on that one day if you don't slow down on the day beforehand.
Exactly, yeah.
Is what I'm trying to get at here. So
no matter how good your intentions, are, there are oftentimes there's just workload. There's workload and there's surprises, and there's things that happen in family life and things that happen in your personal life that just demand that maybe you're going to have to take an occasional Saturday to, catch up on some projects or get ahead. So really the impetus and the kind of nexus of this thought came out of that, of how can we make a Saturday where we can work and both have fun at the same time. And I think that's kind of part of the core of the productivity pub crawl, is it's a way of both having fun with a friend, going and having some fellowship, but also at the same time getting ahead of the curve or catching up on tasks that maybe you had fallen behind during the week on.
And I really liked that idea. I think you proposed it saying, hey, I need to do some work this Saturday. Do you still have stuff you've got to do? And I said yes. And we started to think, okay, how do we plan this out? How do we mix or balance the getting actual work done with reward for getting that work done, and kind of keeping the pendulum swing back and forth happening throughout that time? And so first and foremost, I knew I didn't want to just go to one place and sit there all day, because that can be boring. I'd almost be better off holing up in a library. And again, that's not a bad idea for some people. We just knew, here's a key. We knew ourselves individually and collectively well enough to know that sitting in the same place the entire time, and even if you get up and you go and you take breaks and then come back to that same situated workplace that you've got set up, you may start off great, but you're going to start to deteriorate and get less done as the day goes.
And I think that precisely that changing those locations gives an energy to the day that maybe lacks within your Monday through Friday work week. And like part of the idea of the pub crawl, obviously we're not going to actual pubs or ale houses, but we're going to coffee shops. So we're not imbuing substance, which would make for very bad productivity.
That's the opposite. Yeah, that's the opposite of productivity. But it's the pub crawl mentality of, hey, we're here and we're going to the next spot.
Exactly.
And then you move on to that one, and then you move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And so
it's that energy and kind of the fun of it, and infusing the day with different locations that, at least for our personality types, was an important way of both staying productive but keeping the energy out throughout the day. And we'll talk further in the show about what we learned in doing that. But yeah, that was really sort of the impetus and the nexus of the idea, was to have an energetic and fun day of both friendship and productivity kind of all at the same time.
So we start planning this thing, and we got really excited about this idea. Yes. Like I think we were a little more excited than we should have been.
I think that we were I think we were desperate to get excited about something.
Like, I want to be very excited about working an extra day this week.
Oh, boy.
All day.
Yeah.
And what it came down to was we said, okay, well, we got to break it up. I mean, how do we start? Obviously, we're going to go get lunch at our favorite sushi place to break up the day. And where are we going to go, and how long are we going to stay there, and how do we know where to go, and in what order, and all those kind of variables came up in our minds. And so I said, well, let's see what's open. Well, first off, we listed off our options of where we could go, and I could think of, like, obviously our favorite coffee shop was one option. There was another one that turns out was only open till noon, so that was obviously going to be a morning option. The co-working space that I am a member of, which we could get into, and that has an advantage and a disadvantage in some senses, in that it's completely quiet there. Yeah. Especially on a Saturday.
Yeah, nobody.
And that was one of the things we wanted, was to change up the ambiance and the not entertainment, but just the
environment.
Energy and the environment. And so I said, well, we got to know what's open. We got to know what our options are. We got to know when they're open. So I ended up finding out when all the hours were. Because here's the thing. We sometimes would go to these places throughout the week. What we didn't anticipate, and then started to get a clue in on as we investigated what their availability was on the weekend, was that these places have different hours or clientele.
Different hours, different clientele, and vastly different atmospheres on the weekend versus the week. So, for instance, with our favorite coffee shop, we would go there on, Mondays, Monday through Friday. It's generally, a lot of university professors and a lot of other, fellow remote workers, perhaps a few college students. You go in on a Saturday afternoon and you're going to be lucky to find a seat. Like it's, a mass of college students and families and post-lunch crowd. And I don't think that we had anticipated that. So that is an important factor in trying to, plot out your own productivity pub crawl is thinking about places that you've worked maybe in the past and have enjoyed and been productive at, but think about, what their hours might be on the weekend and what the environment might be like on the weekend, because it could be vastly different.
It could be very different. And this is a good place for me to plug something that I found, which is really helpful for this, which is called Work From. And you can find that at workfrom.co. I'll put the link to that in the show notes. It is an online, it's almost like Yelp for remote working and co-working spaces. Coffee shops included and everything. And it is, I think, at least 200,000 members worldwide, all major cities and a lot of smaller ones too. And you can join in and even add your own places to the mix. It's going to tell you what kind of Wi-Fi strength they have, when the hours are, whether there's beverages or food available, what kind of atmosphere if it's outdoors or indoors, if it's got daylight or sunlight accessibility, if it's quiet, if it's got or if it's more of a communal working space, all these different factors, which again were all factors that I don't think I knew of this site when we came up with this idea, or it kind of passed it by. Those are all factors you kind of need to know when you're judging a place you want to get some work done.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had factored in, a few of these things, but again, we were going into this the first time sort of blind. We didn't know precisely how it was going to work, and I think, as you alluded to earlier, I think we were a little overzealous about the whole thing, a little bit too excited, because I think that we were looking for a way to kind of shake things up and make work exciting. So we did plan it initially the first time very early.
Yes, we thought, hey, if we're going to get up and do this, let's get cracking. Like, I can't remember exactly when we met. I think it was 7:30 or 8 o'clock.
Yeah, 7:30 in the morning.
And we met at a little hole-in-the-wall diner thing that's near us that we could go to and, have eggs and bacon coffee and we were, I think, excited, and I think part of going to the diner in the morning was that sort of way of going, hey, we're going to reward ourselves, here in the morning, and we're going to load up on some food and go jump into the day. It was almost as if we were going to the diner to eat this big breakfast to kickstart like a road trip for the day.
Yes.
And it wouldn't have been as bad if we did do the road trip, but eating so much first thing in the morning, I guess we're getting into what we, how the experience was and kind of almost mixing in what we learned. I know I learned I can't eat that much in the morning first thing if I'm going to really get some work done and have a clear head, because all the blood was rushing to my stomach to digest.
Yeah. And I don't think, again, that we maybe knew that in hindsight. So, we started this off. We had scouted all of our locations. We knew when the hours were going to be. But there were a couple of locations that we weren't as familiar with. Maybe we had been to once. And I think in Midwest Coffee Company's case, we'd never been there before.
Right.
So...
Yeah, I had not been there before.
That was like the first time that we had gone. So... the day progressed, or I guess started out.
The other factor, I got to say, is we started too early.
That's correct.
On a Saturday, we did not factor in the fact that we had just done a full work week, so to speak, a 9 to 5, a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and now we were hitting a Saturday and expecting to have the same energy, whereas that was just not there yet, and we hadn't kind of... So, in other words, one, we had two false steps right away. I mean, again, not a mistake or anything. We just learned that, one, we couldn't eat so much first thing, and we couldn't get started so early.
Again, as with all new endeavors, we didn't know that at the time. We just went, okay, like, this is what we're going to do, and we did. So we jumped into it, and again, our biggest factor throughout these days is that we wanted to kind of keep the energy up by changing the location. One of the drawbacks to that is that you don't get locked into a project or maybe have enough focus or as much focus as you need. But again, we didn't probably know that at the time. So we had breakfast. We went to our first location. I think that we were, struggling against, the tiredness from the food, but still kind of excited to get work done. And I think we both did, and we worked pretty effectively, at that first spot. And then after the first spot, I think that we went out for lunch. Another mistake. Like, we had this big breakfast, and then we went out to our favorite sushi spot for lunch, and then put more, food into us.
And I think right there, I think we went to one of the places. It's been a while now since we did it, but I think one of the things was, and speaking to the focus or even the commitment to what work it is you were meaning to do, to sit down and do. One, you really do need to have a clear plan of this is what I am going to accomplish today. I knew what I wanted to work on. Mm-hmm. I didn't have specificity when it came to, I want to be able to check this specific thing off or these specific things off completely.
That is a huge factor, at least for the both of us, that we learned that if you can assign specific tasks to specific locations, it can help both with the anxiety of, I've got so much to do, how am I going to get it done? Like, any productivity coach or any, good leader would tell you, you break those things up into smaller tasks and you just begin, with the small things. And so by assigning a number of different tasks to different locations, I think that helped, tremendously.
And we had done one part of that by breaking up the location and the time.
Yep.
We failed to match then
breaking up the work
tasks and workflow to that. And that's what I think stunk to me, was the fact that we were leaving our first place, and I just was thinking to myself, I'm still excited about this day, but man, I really felt like I should have got a lot more done in that first chunk.
Yep.
And then because I didn't have clear goals or, again, if I had picked one small thing and fully completed it, I would have felt way different.
Yep. And I think that is such a vital lesson kind of from this, is that this Saturday is not a day for you to set unrealistic goals about what you're going to get done on that day. You're not going to get behind on weeks and weeks of work, or as any college student can tell you, it's not that all-nighter that's going to write the, 5 exam papers that you have neglected to do any work on. That is not how a great, productive Saturday, works. It's those, I think you hit the nail on the head, Eric. It's those small tasks, those little small tasks that are achievable, but that you just need to take that time to get those little things out of the way. And if you can break those up per the locations, it does two things. First, it gives you the confidence and just the great feeling of accomplishing something, but it also takes away the anxiety of that location not being allowed space to breathe for social interaction at the same time. Because one of the main reasons that we did this is that we're great friends and we want to talk, right, to each other. And being able to go to these different coffee shops and establishments throughout the day was just what we would do on a normal Saturday anyway. Like, if we had free time, if it wasn't
we just wouldn't have brought work with us.
We just wouldn't have brought work, exactly. But by breaking the task up into very small, achievable things, it gives room for the location to breathe and to have a little bit of water cooler time, a little bit of social time together, so that each place isn't stacked with anxiety of, I've got to get all this list done at this location, and now, oh man, I've got the next location, 5 things to do on that list. Be realistic about what you can get done within your span of time, and maybe even be realistic about it. Write the 5 things down and then take 2 of those 5 things away.
I was already feeling like, oh man, I wish that I was getting more done.
Yeah.
As we were sitting there eating our sushi, and I wasn't enjoying the sushi as much as I usually do.
Exactly.
Because of that. And I already felt like, we're already ending lunchtime, and now I'm down to like 2 more locations, and then it's over. And did I get enough done? Or would I have been better just taking this day off?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I was probably thinking similar to that, but didn't want to express it because I was like, no, like, this is working. This is great. Yeah. We're reinventing the world here. I agree with that 110%. That was probably a mistake that we made. So we had come to lunch, and like you said, we weren't enjoying it, as much as we would have. We finished that up, and then we go to our next location. And, so...
I think we went to our favorite location and realized that we had misjudged
the Saturday crowd. That's exactly right.
And so suddenly we're like, well, we can't... I mean, there's spots here, but we either need to be separate and or in the middle of like a very crowded area, and it's too loud, noisy, even with like headphones. And I'm not always opposed to that, but on this Saturday, I was already feeling a little like, I just got to get more done than I feel like I can right now.
Yeah, and I think we already felt like the mission was in peril.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was like, oh no. Now this location isn't what we expected. So what's next? And I mean, we did have another location on the docket, so we moved
had,
on.
And in fact, we had backups.
Yes,
like that was what was great. Was we actually, and I think that's a great idea. I mean, I don't know that we actually ever acknowledged that's something we learned. That day was to have backup workspaces. But we did, and so we went to the next. We skipped ahead to the next one, and then he even had an extra. Although I think we didn't go to that last one because we just said, "Okay, we're here and this is working."
Yeah,
we don't need to, we don't need to change for the sake of change at this point. Let's just kind of get more done because we're feeling like we're not.
Yeah, and I think that when we arrived at the final location, would have been the final location of that day. We did lock in, and got quite a bit accomplished in that last location, but we had definitely learned a lot, and we had definitely, I think, walked away knowing we want to do this again.
I want to do this. I want another shot at this.
Exactly. Like, I want another shot at this. I want to mulligan. I want to redo.
We almost did feel like we had a hangover from that.
Yeah, it was.
Productivity pub
practically,
crawl.
Yeah, it could have been an actual pub crawl because I felt a little bit. I remember, I think, talking to you on the Sunday after, or maybe the Monday after, and saying, I'm exhausted. Like, this thing that we kind of wanted to be fun and energetic had turned into something that had sapped us of life rather than giving us life. Really, I guess this does lead directly just into what specifically we kind of learned and how we're gonna do it different.
So let's unpack that. What did we learn? I mean, we've already talked about some of it, which is picking specific tasks that match specific locations, really getting ahead on your homework and knowing those locations that you're going to choose. Another one that we didn't mention yet, but kind of goes into the hangover feel, is pacing yourself on the caffeine if you're going to have some.
Yeah, pace yourself on the caffeine. The big key thing just starting out is don't start too early. Like, do not think, okay, I'm going to get up at the crack of dawn and, have this big productivity day. Give yourself time to wake up naturally. If you do decide to do breakfast, together, and or separate, light breakfast. Just go light on the food, because the last thing that you want is all that food sitting in your stomach, getting started with the day, because it, just drags you down immediately. So yeah, I think starting a little bit later in the day was a big factor.
Yeah. So let's see. Yeah. So we started late the next week. Let's walk through that.
Yeah.
And apply what we learned.
Yeah. So the next week.
So we started later.
Yeah, we started later.
We did breakfast separately, if at all, and it was lighter. And slept in for sure.
Yep, we slept in and just.
I got to bed earlier that Friday night as well on purpose.
Yeah.
That was also a factor.
Yeah, you're intentional about, not treating it like a normal Friday night, like, oh, I'm going to, stay up late and binge Netflix tonight,
right.
But got good rest. And then I think the big thing that we learned was getting into a little bit of sort of our own circadian rhythm, and how that worked. Yes. And so in the first visit, we learned with a new location that we had never been to, this Midwest Coffee Company, that they had this great bar that was open to windows. And
it's like this front porch of a house that it's in.
And... Yeah, it was almost like a screened-in porch, but with windows instead of screens. And it was like sitting out on a screened-in porch. And we both agreed that first week, wow, this is really great. A lot of natural sunlight. Feels really, really great in this location, especially during the winter months. All of you know, getting sunlight is such a key, factor.
And I've talked about that so much in the last few months on this show. Now you can see why that was coming out.
Yeah.
So we were thinking about all of this.
So we had learned that, and we decided, hey, let's get our start at this location that we really, really liked. So we, locked in at that location, didn't really have the food hangover from the first time, and really, for me, didn't have unrealistic expectations in terms of what I could get done. So I was able to just say, okay, I'm here and I can kind of relax. I can enjoy this good coffee. I can enjoy this atmosphere. And I can do it at a pace where I'm not feeling the anxiety about, what needs to get done, for the next location.
Yeah, I went into that first location with no caffeine at all. Mm-hmm. I had hydrated a lot first thing in the morning. So I'd gone to bed early. I'd slept in. I'd gotten up, had a light breakfast, met you there, I think, 9:30 or something like that, and got my first coffee there. We're sitting in the sun, but it's enclosed, so it's not cold out like it is outside, and then had specifically what I wanted to check off. I knew I'm going to get these two things done here, and it's realistic to do so.
Yes, and that it's realistic.
I have more than enough time that then allows me to sit and actually talk with you.
Yeah, and I remember there was like an Entertainment Weekly on like the stand there, and we were able to chit chat a little bit about that because you got to face it, folks. Between Eric and I, if there's Star Wars news or Marvel news, we might not get anything done.
Yeah.
So the chit chat between the two of us can go on for hours. But yeah, we were able to say, I don't have this immense pressure. I can get this thing done, and then I can also, enjoy being with a friend. And kind of leading into that, we stayed, I believe, until noon at this location.
We actually stayed till the point where she had to tell us she was closing. We forgot. That's right. She closed at noon, and so we're like, so sorry.
Yeah, we need to go. And then, we were able to go to lunch feeling probably more hungry than we did the first week.
Yes.
And feeling happier because we had fulfilled the tasks that we needed to do, and we had also engaged with each other in a way that now we can go to lunch and continue our little Entertainment Weekly talk about Star Wars over lunch, and not feel guilty about it that we're not working, and enjoy our favorite sushi place, and enjoy and going out to eat too much is obviously a terrible thing. It's a terrible cycle, but part of, I think, the essence of this pub crawl is being able to do something, go to a place that you really love and don't feel guilty about spending the money. Don't feel bad about that. Find that steakhouse that you really like, or find, whatever your favorite place that you typically maybe wouldn't go, and indulge yourself a little bit with that.
Yeah.
It's part of treating yourself.
One of the treating or even reward things that we've talked about, we haven't done it, was maybe doing this again, but once you're hitting the more like hitting late afternoon, we say, all right, time to go to that movie.
Yep.
And reward yourself with that movie, and it's something you're looking forward to that you get to do by having crossed those things off your list.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that second time through, I think we enjoyed lunch a lot more. Still had a light lunch. That was what I specifically like about sushi.
That's the sushi is, again, this place, best in town, and honestly best I've had. So after the lunch, though, I know we operated the afternoon a little differently, where I feel like we were going to go to two places, but then we also ended up only going to one that time as well. I think two would have worked, but I think one worked well enough because it was clicking. In other words, not feeling like you had to change location for the sake of saying you had made the plans.
Had made the crawl. Yeah, yes. Exactly. And I think that's a key thing, is if you're in a place and it's clicking, and you feel really locked into your work, you don't have to stick to the plan. You don't have to, you can be nimble with the plan, and the plan can adjust to you. So yeah, I think we did end up staying just in that one location. So for some people, I think 4 locations might be good. For me personally, I'm not sure about you. 3 locations was a good way of sort of breaking the day up into the, morning location, lunch, afternoon location, and then
That wind
down location. Like where you can the wind down factor where you can do maybe some admin stuff or do email stuff, do some things that are not high focus. So, and that might be something to address as well. Like, what tasks do require the most thought, and what time for you worked best for that?
For me, it was the morning. It was that morning session, and having that caffeine that was like making my brain buzz, and the sun, and just that time of morning was best for me in terms of creativity, for sure.
Yeah,
and that's what I needed to do at that point.
Me as well.
And in the afternoon, it was more I need to move these things around and organize, though not quite admin. And at the end of the day, I still kept doing some of that, but it was like slower paced.
Sure.
But if I had chosen I would have better chosen like a task of cleaning out my email inbox and even organizing. Like, even listing stuff off that I know I needed to do the next week.
For the coming week,
and brainstorming, so I didn't have to do that the next week. Yeah.
Obviously, it will be different for everybody, but it's a good thing to just be attuned to when you do maybe your test flight, for this is what time of the day was I feeling best? Was I feeling most productive? And then making out your to-do list accordingly. Like, making that list out accordingly as to what task you're going to do when.
One other major factor that we became much more aware of, even though we'd worked together before, working on things separately, but being together, is this idea of we want that water cooler benefit.
Absolutely.
But we also got to get work done. How do we make that work when we're not working? We're not collaborating on the same thing, and that's a benefit. I mean, heck, can you think about the fact that if two people were working on the same project together, how all of these dynamics would change up a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely...
But we're not going to go there fully.
Not going to go there fully. That might work, for certain people. But yeah, I think that that this type of dynamic works best for people who are working in completely, different tasks or completely different offices, period.
And we get used to that. We get used to... sit, or at least I am. I know this. As a former cubicle worker... I would sit and focus, uber focus, in my cubicle.
Yeah.
That's kind of what they're there for, sort of, I guess. And I would get my stuff done, and then, okay, that's done.
Yeah.
Get up and go get a cup of coffee, go to someone else's cube, see what they're doing, talk about the Star Wars stuff and, all that. But it's kind of that ebb and flow of how much is too much, how much, work is enough versus not enough. And I think we started to cue in on, and there's still times where it's like, okay, we got to sit down and do some work.
Yeah.
But like signals are good, like headphones.
Absolutely. Like, when you're working with somebody, it is difficult sometimes to know like kind of what the boundaries are. Am I talking to them too much? Are we getting a little bit sidetracked, just having a good time? And so what are those signals? What are those little things that you can do to just kind of cue, hey, I got to lock in right now? And headphones, I think, are for both of us kind of that we'll sit down at a table and, kind of have our initial chit chat. But when we see either person kind of reach for the headphones, that's the cue, like, I need to lock in right now. I need some space.
And that requires self-discipline from one or the both of us to keep that off.
Yeah.
But
it does require some discipline because, hey, we're just having a good time and we're talking. But, we are here to get work done. That's what, like, this whole task is about. So I think just being sensitive to that for the other person and being receptive to, okay, they were really locked in to this task right now. I shouldn't bother them. For you, I know sometimes you'll actually just remove yourself from, the whole situation, which again I think is great. Like, you'll just say, okay, I'm up and I'm just going to a different table, and that's great. I think that's sort of necessary.
I'll try to find a standing desk or a bar kind of situation that I can use because I've been sitting too long. Too. So. And
that is definitely part of doing a marathon kind of day like this, where you're working all day after a work week, is that sometimes you're just sitting around, a little bit too much. So finding a place that has a tall table or a standing desk can be really helpful.
Even breaking up the time into like I don't know, I'd almost call it, I mean, we're going from location to location, but breaking it up and using like micro locations within the original location. Like I'm thinking of the Abbey Coffee, where you've got the atrium you can go to, there's the upstairs loft, there's the downstairs main area, there's even then, again, getting up and moving location and separating, but even depending upon where you are, like at that location specifically, we can get up and go outside, even in the coldest of weather, to be honest, and walk around the building. And it takes a good 5 minutes to do that lap, but that's a good, one, to get your blood flowing, two, it breaks up the time and it says, okay, when I sit back down or stand wherever at the workspace, I'm starting in on this and I'm working it through to completion, however big that thing is. And that's another good way to break that up or signify, even if we both get up and we go do that walk together, then we separate when we sit back down and go to our corners. And
yeah, absolutely. I think overall, that may be one of the biggest lessons that we actually took away from this, is sort of micro-location, if you will, for lack of a better term, is having locations within locations. So maybe for people out there, it's a shopping center or someplace that has like multiple coffee shops, or a mall, or university campuses are great for this. So for Erik and I, since the Productivity Pub Crawl, we've actually come to use the facilities at our local university, across the way, and find that, I can actually apply this sort of multi-location thinking to my Monday through Friday. Like, that I can have break up, different places where I work during the day, even on a, Monday through Friday day, and kind of keep that energy and just keep a variety, going.
For me, it awoke something in me, because prior to this experiment, I had my standing desk station that was always there, and I was spending a lot of time there. I was working, because originally I was working out of my bedroom, and then moved out to that loft. But then we sold our house, and that desk went away, and the place that we're renting, I mean, we're actually going to be moving again, which is great. All that to say, like, I was missing having a set workstation at my home location. And so this awoke in me this idea that, like, wait a second, I can go to a specific place and know what I'm going to go and do there that morning and then be done. And it doesn't have to be a public place. It can be a private place, whether it's a co-working place or a mixture of both. Because I became way more open to all these different opportunities and areas and places. We found one that's, when we can get it, it's ideal. And it's got lots of sun. It's got super strong Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And it's got ambiance and atmosphere, but you're separated from it enough to where, like, there's closed doors.
It's quiet.
It's quiet. Or you can step outside, and even outside into the real world, not just into the inner section there. And it's really made a huge difference. So, I mean, walking away from having done these experiments, I really started to get a good feel for, I can really hit stuff hard, and especially do creative stuff first thing in the morning. And I want, I've started to eat, I don't eat huge breakfasts, and I try to actually save coffee for later in the morning and get that sunlight and, and say, this is where I'm going until this time of day, and this is what I'm getting done. And then I know and I accommodate that based, in my Monday through Friday based on what my schedule looks like. Because just, sometimes I just can't go out in public if I've got a call, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Like, work is going to dictate, certain places that you need to be. But overall, like, these kind of ideas of are applicable for your Monday through Friday. I think, a lot of the things that we discovered. So, any other specific things that you kind of have taken away from this or learned from the experience? Or
I think that this is one of those things that, as a remote worker, you really, like, I would say some people are thinking, hey, if I've got a sweet setup in my home office, why do I need to go anywhere? And though I'm looking forward to having that back again in my life, I am not going to work there all day, every day. I've already anticipated, dropping my daughter off at school, at a different school when she moves to that school, and knowing, hey, I can drop her off And then I can spend a good hour doing a specific thing every morning at a certain coffee shop or whatever. And that's going to be a great way to kickstart my day, and then come home till lunch, eat lunch home, and then maybe get out again or not. And just the flexibility of it and the camaraderie of it, even if you're not working on the same project, cannot be underestimated.
Yeah, and for me, you hit the nail on the head with the camaraderie issue. I think the biggest thing for me as a remote worker, and obviously for everyone it's different, but for me it is the isolation of it, is that you're working every day, and of course you're in contact with your colleagues, whether that's on Skype or whether it's on Glip or Slack or, whatever, software that you might be using. But there is no substitute for actual great human interaction. Mm-hmm. So for me, I think that is the big factor, in all of this is having, a time to feel like you have a work colleague who is actually not working for the same company you are.
It's it's a non-coworker work colleague.
Yeah, exactly. It's so the camaraderie of that, is just great.
Yeah. And again, if you have to do this on your own, and you're going to these places solo, again, that's kind of what we've been, we don't work together every single day.
No.
But we both adapted aspects and learnings from these experiments into our everyday, day-to-day work life, and I think it's been very helpful. I've been glad to have done it, and looking forward to trying out some other experiments when it comes to this.
And we'll keep you updated if we learn new things, and would love your feedback or comments about if you've had similar experiences, like, as remote workers, or how do you handle, more of a laid back work Saturday? Some people, maybe they like to work from home on that day, and it's, it's a veg on the couch with Netflix on or something and just do work. Whatever works for you, I think is best. But for us, this was really a valuable endeavor, I think.
Yeah. Well, Todd, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. This was fun.
So when are you going to do your productivity pub crawl? Do you have somebody you already co-work with or remote work with? Have you tried this out before? Or if you're a solo worker, try and find somebody. Or if you're going to do it by yourself, cool. Ultimately, what I want to know and what I want to hear from you is, 1, did you try it out? 2, did you take any of what we learned and incorporated that into your experiment before you did it and hopefully got even better results than our initial 2 tries? 3, are you already doing some of this stuff? 4, have you grabbed an X stand yet? You really need to. Again, literally as I'm recording this, I am using it, and I do use it every day, almost all day, and in different formations. And I gotta say, I love it. I really do. I mean, I asked them to be a sponsor because I love the product that much. I really hope you go check it out at getxstand.com. And if you decide to purchase one, in fact, I'm thinking of getting more myself, for me as well to give out as gifts. If you want to get 15% off, go to getxstand.com and enter the discount code BTTDL15. That's BTTDL15. 15% off plus free shipping in the U.S. Let me know if you get one, and let me know if you do the Productivity Pub Crawl. Leave a comment in the show notes for this episode at beyondthetodolist.com/164. Thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and like LeVar Burton, I'll see you next time. Beyond the To-Do List is a proud member of the Noodle Mix Network. Find more of our award-winning and award-nominated podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at noodle.mx.